After 60, God changes everything. Here's why He's drawing you closer. There comes a point in life when the laughter of crowded rooms begins to echo differently. The phone doesn't ring as often. The house grows quieter, not just because the children have moved out or the parties have faded, but because God Himself has started to turn the volume of the world down. It isn't that people have forgotten you. It's that heaven is starting to remember you in a new way. When you reach your 60s, something sacred begins to happen, something few recognize at first. The same God who once surrounded you with noise, responsibility, and constant movement now begins to pull you inward. You start to feel a holy disconnection from the world that once demanded your every hour. Faces fade, friend circles shift, the rhythm of life slows, and suddenly you find yourself in a season where God's voice is clearer, but His path feels lonelier. You wonder why He's drawing you away from people, why conversations don't fulfill you like they used to, why gatherings feel shallow, or why certain friends quietly drift away. You might even ask yourself, am I being forgotten? But the truth is far deeper. You're not being abandoned, you're being chosen for something quieter, holier, more eternal. When God pulls you away from people, it's because He's preparing to reveal parts of Himself that only solitude can unveil. This isn't the loneliness of loss, it's the holiness of transition. It's the whisper of eternity brushing against your heart, calling you closer. The Lord is shifting your focus from what is fading to what is everlasting. He is teaching you to value presence over productivity, prayer over plans, and stillness over striving. You are entering a divine classroom where the teacher speaks in silence and the lessons shape your soul for eternity. After 60, the world might see you as slowing down, but God sees you as drawing nearer. You are not stepping away from people, you are stepping toward Him. Every quiet morning, every moment of reflection, every tear shed in secret is part of a sacred exchange. God is doing something holy in your hidden years, something that only heaven fully understands, because the truth is, you're not being pulled away. You're being called higher. 1. The sacred silence. When God begins to whisper, there comes a time when God stops shouting through the noise of life and starts whispering through the quiet. In your younger years, He spoke through busyness, through people, through responsibilities, through the clamor of building, striving, and becoming. But as the decades pass, He changes His method. The older you grow, the softer His voice becomes. Not because He's distant, but because He wants you to lean in closer to hear Him. This is the mystery of sacred silence. When the house grows still and the world stops demanding your attention, God begins to reclaim your soul. He no longer competes with distractions, He removes them. One by one, He takes away the noise that used to fill your days until only His presence remains. And though at first it feels like loss, it's actually preparation. Silence is God's invitation to intimacy. You might wake up some mornings and wonder why everything feels quieter now. The phone calls, the conversations, the gatherings. But what if this quietness isn't emptiness at all? What if it's God saying, "Come and sit with me"? What if the stillness you feel is the doorway to His presence? The same voice that once thundered over mountains now speaks gently within your spirit. He is not silent, He is whispering. When the noise of the world fades, you start to hear the rhythm of eternity. You notice the small things again. The breeze moving through the trees, the faint sound of birds in the morning, the warmth of sunlight on your hands. These are no longer ordinary moments. They are divine appointments. Each one is God's way of saying, "I'm still here. I never left." In sacred silence, your prayers change. They become less about asking and more about listening. You begin to realize that God doesn't need your performance. He desires your presence. You stop trying to impress Him with words, and instead, you start to feel His nearness in your breathing, in your stillness, in your surrender. Silence becomes the language of love between Creator and creation, and in that silence, He begins to heal. The wounds you carried quietly for years, the disappointments that never had closure, the unspoken fears about aging and purpose, He touches them all in the quiet. There is something about silence that makes the heart tender again, teachable again, humble again, because when you stop talking, you finally make space for God to speak. This sacred silence is not empty, it's full of the Spirit, full of grace, full of divine presence. The closer you draw to God, the less you need words. The more you know Him, the more you understand that His whispers carry more power than the world's shouts. And in this holy quiet, you begin to realize something profound. The silence you feared is the sanctuary you needed. 2. The unseen separation. God's way of protecting your spirit. Sometimes God doesn't just quiet the noise. He removes the source of it. He begins to pull you away from certain people, from circles you once fit into, from conversations that used to excite you. Suddenly, you find yourself on the outside of gatherings you once belonged to. You notice that calls go unanswered, invitations grow fewer, and some relationships fade without warning. It feels personal, but it's not punishment. It's protection. God sees things you don't see. He hears words spoken in secret, feels motives that you can't perceive, and understands the spiritual weight behind every connection. When He starts separating you from certain people, it's not because you're unworthy. It's because your spirit has become too precious to be handled carelessly. You've walked through too much, prayed through too much, grown through too much, to keep standing in places that no longer feed your soul. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when God says, "Enough. Enough pleasing people who don't value your peace. Enough pouring into hearts that never pour back. Enough fighting for spaces where your spirit can no longer breathe." He begins to move you, quietly, firmly, away from what drains you, toward what strengthens you, and sometimes that means solitude. This unseen separation is divine surgery. It hurts, yes. You'll feel the sting of disconnection, the ache of missing familiar faces, but what feels like loss is actually God cutting away the unnecessary. Just like a gardener prunes the branches so the tree can bear more fruit, God prunes your relationships so your soul can flourish. Every goodbye He allows has a holy reason behind it. You may not realize it yet, but the people He removes were not meant to walk with you into this next chapter. Their season in your story has ended, and holding on would only weigh you down. God knows that new peace cannot coexist with old patterns. To protect your spirit, He allows distance. To preserve your anointing, He allows silence. He's not trying to isolate you, He's insulating you. He's wrapping you in His presence, keeping you from words that would wound you and energies that would exhaust you. You are not being rejected by man, you are being redirected by God. So don't chase what God is cutting, don't reopen doors He has gently closed. Every time He moves someone out of your life, it's because He wants to take His rightful place in your heart. The emptiness you feel now is not abandonment, it's space being cleared for His glory. And when you finally stop reaching for what He has removed, you'll find something beautiful waiting on the other side. Peace that no one can steal, strength that no one can shake, and a deeper communion with the one who never leaves. The unseen separation is not the end of connection, it's the beginning of holiness. 3. The refining fire. God purifies before promotion. There comes a time when God's love no longer comforts, it refines. When He stops soothing your soul and starts shaping it. This is what the refining fire feels like. Not cruel, but consuming. Not punishment, but purification. You reach a stage in life where the Lord begins to strip away everything that cannot enter your next season. After 60, you've seen joy and pain, success and loss, laughter and tears. But now, God is preparing you for something different, something eternal. He's not trying to break you, He's burning away what no longer belongs. The pride that once hid behind your confidence, the bitterness that quietly sat beneath your forgiveness, the fear that whispered you were too old, too late, too tired. He touches it all with holy fire, and yes, it burns. Refining always does. Because fire reveals what comfort hides. Fire exposes the motives, the wounds, the attachments that were never meant to stay. You'll find yourself going through seasons that feel unfair, people misunderstanding you, prayers unanswered, dreams delayed. But God is not being silent, He's being surgical. Every moment of pain has purpose. Every tear is washing something away. When gold goes into the fire, it's not destroyed, it's defined. The impurities rise to the surface so they can be removed, leaving only what's pure and eternal. That's what God is doing in you. The years you've lived are not wasted, they're being refined into wisdom. The heartaches you've endured are not scars, they're sanctified strength. The fire you feel is not against you, it's working for you. Some people lose everything and call it tragedy, but those who walk with God learn to call it transformation, because before He promotes, He purifies. Before He crowns, He cleanses. Before He reveals the next level of His glory, He removes what cannot handle the weight of it. You are not being punished, you are being prepared. Think about Moses. He spent 40 years in the wilderness before God sent him back to deliver a nation. Or Joseph, who was betrayed, forgotten, imprisoned, only to be positioned for divine promotion. The delay was the preparation. The fire was the filter. God never elevates without refining first. And at this stage of life, God's refining looks different. He's not asking you to build more. He's asking you to become more. Not to chase success, but to carry holiness. He's purifying your desires, simplifying your purpose, sanctifying your memories. The things that once defined you are being burned away so that only what's eternal remains. It's easy to question him in the fire. It's easy to say, Lord, why now? Why me? Why still? But if you could see what he's shaping, you'd understand why he must melt you first. Because only when the gold is liquid can it be molded. Only when you surrender everything can he shape you perfectly. So let the fire do its work. Don't run from it. Rest in it. Because when it's over, you won't just survive. You'll shine. You'll come out radiant with wisdom, peace, and grace that only a life refined by God can carry. The refining fire isn't the end of your story. It's the holy forge of your promotion. 4. The call to legacy. From social circles to spiritual impact. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when God shifts the focus from what you build around you to what he builds through you. This is the call to legacy. It's not about popularity anymore. It's not about being known. It's about being remembered for something eternal. When you were younger, you gathered people. You built friendships, careers, routines, and social circles that made life full. But now, in this sacred chapter, God is redirecting your heart from social connection to spiritual contribution. He's teaching you that impact doesn't come from how many people know your name. It comes from how many lives feel your prayer. You may not stand on stages anymore, but heaven still listens when you speak. You may not lead the way you once did, but your quiet faith still moves mountains in unseen places. Every time you share wisdom with someone younger, every time you pray in secret for your children and grandchildren, every time you forgive what the world would hold on to, you're writing a legacy that outlives you. Legacy isn't built in crowds, it's built in consistency. It's built in small, faithful acts of obedience that heaven records. You may not see the results now, but God does. The seeds you plant in prayer will bloom long after your earthly presence fades. The words you speak in kindness will echo through generations. After 60, your influence changes shape. It no longer comes from activity, but from authority, the kind that only comes through experience and endurance. You've walked through storms that younger souls haven't faced yet. You've seen God's faithfulness over decades. And now your life becomes a testimony, a living sermon, a sacred example of what endurance in Christ looks like. This is why God pulls you away from constant busyness, because he wants you to build something deeper than momentum. He wants you to build memory. He wants you to teach others not how to chase success, but how to chase him. You've become the keeper of spiritual inheritance, the bridge between what God has done and what he's about to do. You might think your season of usefulness is over, but God says it's just beginning, only in a different way. He no longer needs your hands to build, but he needs your heart to bless. Your presence in a room carries peace that others can't explain. Your counsel carries weight because it's been refined by fire. Your faith carries fragrance because it's been tested by tears. Legacy is not about what you leave behind. It's about what you leave within. The stories of faith you share, the love you sow, the prayers you whisper when no one's watching. Those are the treasures that moth and rust cannot destroy. And maybe that's why God has pulled you aside, not to end your influence, but to elevate it, to turn your social energy into spiritual authority, to turn your words into wisdom, your experiences into examples, your quiet moments into eternal seeds. Because the truth is, at this stage of life, you're not fading, you're ripening. You're becoming the living legacy of God's grace, the evidence of his faithfulness, and the vessel through which his story continues. Your circle may be smaller now, but your impact is infinite. 5. The holy exchange. Losing people, finding purpose. There's a moment in the spiritual journey when loss becomes your teacher. You start noticing that the very people who once filled your life begin to drift away, slowly, quietly, without conflict, without closure. It confuses you at first. It hurts deeply. But in that ache, God is whispering, I am making room for something holier. This is the holy exchange, when God removes what no longer serves your destiny, so he can place within you what will carry you into eternity. It is never random. Heaven never subtracts without the intent to multiply. The empty chairs at your table are not symbols of rejection. They are symbols of divine rearrangement. Sometimes you have to lose people to find purpose. Because not everyone can walk with you once your mission shifts from worldly connection to eternal calling. The friends who loved you in your busyness might not understand your stillness. The ones who celebrated your success might grow silent when God begins reshaping you for significance. But the separation is sacred because your spirit is being set apart for something higher. You'll notice that your heart begins to change too. You don't crave crowds anymore. You don't need validation to feel valuable. You don't chase conversations that lead nowhere. Instead, you find peace in simplicity. You begin to see purpose in solitude. You start to realize that losing people doesn't mean you're empty. It means you're finally full of God. This exchange isn't just about relationships, it's about realignment. God takes away distractions, obligations, even comforts, so that your dependence shifts fully onto Him. Where you once leaned on people, you now lean on His promises. Where you once searched for understanding, you now rest in His wisdom. You begin to understand that His presence is not a supplement to life, it is life. In the quiet that follows loss, God starts building something sacred. He gives you new eyes to see that every removal was a rescue. He was saving you from words that would wound your peace, from relationships that would drain your spirit, from attachments that would anchor you to the wrong shore. You didn't lose them, you were released from them. And what you gain in return is far greater than what you've lost. You gain discernment, to recognize peace as the sign of His will. You gain depth, to love without attachment, to forgive without expectation. You gain clarity, to see that purpose often grows in the soil of pain. Because that's how God works. He empties before He fills. He breaks before He blesses. He takes away the temporal so He can reveal the eternal. The same hands that removed are the hands that will rebuild. The same God who allowed loss is the God who is preparing abundance. So don't mourn the distance. Bless it. Don't resent the silence. Listen through it. Don't curse the absence. Recognize the exchange. You are not losing. You are trading what was temporary for what is timeless. You are exchanging people for purpose, approval for anointing, attention for intimacy with God. This is the holy exchange, where heaven rewrites your definition of fullness, and you finally learn that being alone with God is the most complete place you can ever be. 6. The wilderness of wisdom, where God teaches the mature soul. There is a sacred classroom that few ever enter willingly, the wilderness. It's quiet there, stripped of applause, stripped of distraction, stripped of the noise that used to make you feel alive. But for the mature soul, the wilderness is where the deepest lessons are taught. It is where wisdom is no longer something you read about, but something you live. God always teaches His greatest servants in hidden places. Moses met Him in the wilderness. Elijah heard His whisper in the wilderness. Even Jesus was tested in the wilderness before His ministry began. The wilderness is not a punishment, it is preparation. It's where your dependence on people fades, and your dependence on God becomes unshakable. When you've lived long enough, you realize the wilderness isn't a place of emptiness, it's a place of encounter. You start to see that the isolation you feared is actually the environment where God can finally get your undivided attention. He's not trying to deprive you, He's trying to develop you. Every delay, every detour, every quiet morning that feels uneventful is a divine classroom where heaven is still teaching. In your younger years, you might have needed activity to feel valuable. But now God is showing you that value doesn't come from motion, it comes from meaning. You can sit in stillness and still be fulfilling your purpose. You can walk slowly and still be in His will, because wisdom is not measured by how much you do, it's revealed by how deeply you understand what He's doing. In the wilderness of wisdom, God starts to redefine success. He teaches you that influence without intimacy is empty, that peace is a greater treasure than recognition, that hearing His whisper outweighs any human praise. You start to care less about being seen and more about being aligned. You begin to realize that what once looked like isolation is actually insulation, protection from distractions that could steal your clarity. It's in this place that your prayers mature. You stop praying for escape, and you start praying for endurance. You stop asking for God to change your surroundings, and you start asking Him to change your sight. The wilderness gives you holy perspective. It shows you that miracles still happen in dry places, that manna still falls in the desert, and that even when everything feels barren, God is still bringing forth life from within you. You'll find that in this quiet season, God begins to speak through simplicity. A verse you've read 1,000 times suddenly feels brand new. A breeze through an open window feels like His breath on your soul. The weight of His peace becomes your daily portion. You don't rush anymore, because you realize there's nothing to chase when you already have Him. The wilderness of wisdom transforms how you see the world. You no longer ask, "Why am I here?" You start saying, "What are you showing me, Lord?"
You stop measuring your days by productivity and start measuring them by presence. And slowly, the wilderness that once felt like exile becomes the garden where you and God walk together in the cool of the day. You may not be surrounded by people, but you're surrounded by purpose. You may not hear applause, but you can hear His voice. And that's enough, because once you've learned in the wilderness, you carry something the world cannot take from you, a peace born of wisdom, and a wisdom born of walking alone with God.
7. The holy intimacy. God draws you closer to Himself. There comes a time when God no longer calls you to serve from the stage. He calls you to sit at His feet. The noise has faded, the crowd has thinned, and what's left is something sacred, a holy intimacy that the world cannot understand. It's not about doing anymore, it's about being with Him, being known by Him, being still in the presence of the one who has walked beside you through every season of your life. After 60, you start to see it, the slow, gentle pull toward heaven, not in a fearful way, but in a familiar one. God begins to draw you in as if saying, "Come closer. You've spent your life serving me, now let me hold you." The pace of your days slows because He wants your attention. The solitude you feel isn't isolation, it's invitation. He's calling you from activity to intimacy, from duty to delight. In this season, your relationship with God becomes less about what you can offer and more about what you can receive. You begin to realize that He never needed your perfection, only your presence. He delights in your quiet prayers, your gentle worship, your reflective walks. The same God who once sent you out to impact others now calls you inward to rest in His love. This intimacy feels different. It's not about asking for miracles. It's about recognizing that your whole life has been one. It's not about pleading for direction. It's about realizing that every detour led you right here into His arms. You start to see that the tears, the victories, the losses, the laughter, they were all threads in a tapestry woven by His hand. And now He wants to show you the masterpiece. You begin to experience His presence in the simplest ways, a verse that suddenly feels like a heartbeat, a moment of silence that feels full of His warmth. You don't rush anymore because you know God isn't in a hurry. You realize He values your stillness more than your speed. You begin to understand what David meant when he said, "Be still and know that I am God." This is the sacred union of the later years, where faith turns into friendship. You're no longer just His servant, you're His companion. You're not striving to prove your devotion, you're resting in the reality that He's loved you all along. The fire of youth has softened into a steady glow, the glow of someone who knows God, not just believes in Him. And this closeness, it's holy. It's the kind of nearness that doesn't need words, the kind that wraps around you in peace that surpasses understanding. It's what all those years of prayer, loss, and perseverance were leading to, not a destination of glory, but a relationship of depth. You've walked long enough to know that God's greatest gift is not what He gives you, but how near He becomes. And now, as He draws you closer, you realize, this is what it was all for. Every trial, every tear, every quiet night was leading to this holy intimacy, where you and God walk hand in hand, heart in heart, closer than ever before. Because the older you grow, the clearer it becomes. Heaven isn't just a place you're going to, it's a presence you're already beginning to feel. Conclusion. You see, what you once called loss was never really loss at all. It was God reshaping your story, gently, purposefully, lovingly into something eternal. The people who left, the doors that closed, the silence that settled over your days, they weren't the signs of an ending. They were the beginning of holiness. At this stage of life, you are not being pushed aside, you are being pulled closer. The noise of the world fades because heaven is turning up the volume of eternity. You are hearing things now that can only be heard in quiet rooms, the whisper of God's comfort, the hum of His peace, the soft echo of your own spirit saying, "I trust you, Lord." This season isn't about productivity, it's about presence. It's not about doing more for God, but knowing Him more deeply. You've spent decades working, serving, giving, and now He's saying, "Come rest with me a while." The slowing down is not a signal of weakness, it's a signal of intimacy. It's God saying, "You've run well, now walk with me." All the separation, the refinement, the wilderness, the silence, it's all been leading here, to this still place where your heart and heaven finally move in rhythm. To this sacred awareness that your purpose was never just about influence or success, it was always about relationship, it was always about love. And now, in these golden years, you're not losing life, you're gaining light. You're not stepping away from meaning, you're stepping into it. The world may see age, but heaven sees arrival. This is the part of the story where the noise fades and the glory begins to shine.
God has not forgotten you. He is finishing you. He is polishing the edges of your soul, preparing it for the brilliance of eternity. The quietness you feel is not absence, it's anticipation. It's the stillness before heaven opens its gates and welcomes you with words you've waited your whole life to hear. Well done, my good and faithful servant. So rest now, not in resignation, but in revelation. You are not at the end, you are at the beginning of forever. Every lonely moment, every sacred silence, every whisper of His presence has been preparing you for this, to walk hand in hand with your Creator, finally home, finally whole, finally holy.